Hey, Sarah, this is Phil, and I know it's a holiday, but we need to speak about you buying gift cards to send to a foreign prince. The foreign prince is just over the top, dead giveaway.
Always, always.
I like this one. I love this one attorney who works with the firm. I think he's from Uzbekistan, but it's all Russia to me. So I think he's going to be. I don't know if he'd be insulted by that, but he piped up. I thought it was really funny. He piped up in the lawyer chat. He's like, "I'm the foreign prince." So don't do it. No foreign princes, no gift cards. Just
No wiring money. No, you forgot to pay the
uh,
AC bill. Anything like that.
yeah. All right. So some of our lawyers listen to the show. A lot of our people listen to the show. Please don't do that. Welcome to episode 135 of the Weekly Docket, a podcast by the Silverman Law Firm, where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is August 13th, 2026. I'm Phil Silverman, owner of the firm and your host, and I'm joined by Chris Hill, who's the firm's top dog litigator. It's a new title every week, Chris.
I think there's shows that do that kind of stuff, right? I've noticed that's your new shtick. Like I'm gonna come up with a new title, and I just have to wait every week to see what it is.
We promoted a head legal assistant at our law firm, and our business director, he had this he came from like big consulting. I didn't even know what the title was, but it sounded really fancy. And I'm not to discount the value of that legal assistant because it's a big promotion, and we all love him. But it was a very fancy title. So, I do have I'll show everybody. Let's see, I'm gonna lean in here and grab it. But on my desk, like this is what sits on my desk at all times. Can you see?
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
and it was again, growing up Jewish, but I did a white elephant gift Christmas thing that Gentiles do. I didn't know Gentiles, and I know about it now, but it was new for me at the time. You go around and you give gifts that you don't really want. So I got the top dog, trophy. So I do put that on my desk. And it's obviously tongue in cheek because, depending upon the week, I feel really fancy. And then other times I'm in the trenches of payroll or something because we've had some turnover in our bookkeeping department or whatever. But so I go from top dog to bottom dog in a day's time. All right.
That doesn't sound right. I hope we don't ever use the term bottom dog. Yeah, right.
Know what that means. I don't want to know what that means.
I don't think it means anything. It sounds like a phrase that should not be repeated on podcast
All right.
airwaves.
We're keeping the show PG. All right, let's talk about what we've got on our docket today. We're going to be talking about some security deposit accounting, which is always miserable, but people love talking about it. Phishing emails, why you should never buy gift cards. I think we talked about that before. Some long-winded question here from one of the attorneys about back taxes and clearing title over. We're going to try to make that interesting. And then the removing members without an operating agreement. Always a, thing. All right, let's go ahead and get it kicked off with our first legal question. This was interesting. Can I do an accounting and mail the check after 30 days if I'm the landlord? So you're the landlord and you've got 30 days from the date the tenant gives you the forwarding address, and you owe them the money. So you want to send the accounting on day 29 and you actually want to send the check like on day 60. Is that kosher or no?
Like a good lawyer, I wouldn't advise people without first looking at the code. So I'm not trying to squirm on this. I don't remember exactly what the code says. I think you are supposed to return it within 30 days. Maybe you're going to tell me the accounting needs to be within 30 days. And then if you don't do it within 30 days, you're presumed to be in bad faith. But perhaps if you have a very good one, but I don't know what that reason would be, because you're supposed to be holding tenant deposits in a trust account. So you should have the money and you should be able to process it. So I would check the rule before giving any official advice, but I don't love it. And it sounds like you might be playing with fire.
Well, and your inclination as an attorney is right. Let's just read the code, okay? But and the code says this is section 92, chapter 92 of the property code. I can't remember if it's chapter or section at the moment. Is it chapter 92.109 D like Delta? A landlord who fails either to return a security deposit or to provide a written description and itemization of deductions by the 30th day after the date, yada yada yada. That was pretty clear to me. You got to do both, right? Fascinating, because I'm glad I'm clearing this up, because one of our lawyers was in a JP court and the judge was very conservative county. I love this county, very landlord friendly, and the judge had the interpretation that, oh, you can just do the accounting and then send the check later. I don't think that's true, but love the judge, love the JP court, for taking that position. We are mostly landlord friendly because landlords have the money to pay us. But yeah, we help some tenants out too, but that's just it. So answer to that.
Well, and part of it, the other side of it is and this is part of your fact pattern. You said you owe the money. If you don't owe money, then there's no amount wrongfully withheld. So there's not really any damages. But again, that's not a great way to operate. If you do owe the money, you want to get it paid. And I think there is something in there about presuming bad faith, and then you get 3 times the amount wrongfully withheld. And that's what your tenant's always going to accuse you of, right? They're going to say, you withheld my $2,500 deposit. I want $7,500.
Yeah. This what really upset this judge. Okay. And I think this was correct. The landlord the tenant had received a full security deposit accounting, and she was there just on the exemplary damages, on the punitive damages of the 3 times. And the judge was like, wait a minute, you have no actual damages. You're just here because you allege that the check was like 5 or 10 days late. And it set him off. So there's a lesson for the tenants out there. This was one of these AI filed things, never should have been filed. Okay. Any other comments about that?
No, I mean, there's a lot of JP judges, and judges are human, whether you're a JP judge, district judge, federal court judge.
Yeah.
This just feels like one of those that maybe a different judge might go a different way, but
yeah,
it's their courtroom, and you don't know how busy they are that day. And I can definitely see that perspective of, hey, we got real issues we need to hear about, and about whether people are actually wrongfully being evicted, or whether landlords need their property back, Yeah. But hey, if we get a good result for the client, that's always a good day.
Yeah. All right, well said. Let's move on to our next question. Spotting phishing emails. This isn't really a legal question. This is more than just something we have to talk about as a public service. This happens all the time at our firm. I will never, let me just say, I hate to speak in absolutes, but I will never, as the owner of the firm, email or call anybody and ask you to buy gift cards for anyone, ever. All right. So that's the common scam we're getting. I've got a screenshot here. You can't see, it's not important, but it's basically going out to one of our attorneys, and it's from this, these are really clever, because it's from one of these Slack imitators. It's like one of these communication, like we're using some platform at the firm that's not a standard email address to communicate, like workflow procedures, whatever. And he's like, Sean, I hope you're doing well. And as we address future profits, I want you to ensure that we connect, and let's get this conversation. This is my preferred contact method. So, and I can almost assure you that that's going to go into gift cards or some point, or a wire transfer or something like that. So only through firm company information. And then we talked about this before, but we did have an attorney, someone pretended to be me, texted him and said, hey, Bill, go out and buy some gift cards. We're going to celebrate this employee's birthday. That was just stupid. Like, you're 85 years old or something. And
that scam's been around for a while. The whole gift card thing, that should be a red flag. And they are getting more sophisticated, but as soon as they start learning to use proper English, think we're all in trouble.
Well,
For now, you can usually spot those.
the AI is the AI is allowing them to write in perfect English. That's what's making it really hard. Here's one, hey, Sarah, this is Phil, and I know it's a holiday, but we need to speak about you buying gift cards to send to a foreign prince. The foreign prince is just over the top, dead giveaway.
Always.
I like this one. I love this one attorney who works with the firm. I think he's from Uzbekistan, but it's all Russia to me, So I think he's going to be. I don't know if he'd be insulted by that, but he piped up. I thought it was really funny. He piped up in the lawyer chat. He's like, "I'm the foreign prince." So don't do it. No foreign princes. No gift cards. Just
no wiring money. No, you forgot to pay the AC bill. Anything like that.
Yeah. All right. So some of our lawyers listen to the show. A lot of our people listen to the show. Please don't do that. All right. All right. Moving.
There was one, that like, and another one is checking domains, like you said. So if it's, they'll create a Gmail account and it'll be P. Silverman, Silb Law Firm. Sorry, I didn't mean give out confidential information, but they'll get your name and the law firm to try to make it look like it's the domain of the law firm, but then it's gmail.com, right? CEO Tom Smith, ATT, gmail.com, to try to make it look like he's the AT&T. Like, oh, well, I see that it's the guy's name and AT&T, and then, oh, I just won't pay attention to the Gmail. Or I did see one that was, they replaced I's with J's, which it's like, okay, so now you really have to look like replacing U's with V's or I's with J's, and
yeah,
a little more sophisticated.
There's a lot of that going on. Yeah, watch the domain name. That's a good tip. So, okay, let's move on to our next legal question. And this is, hey team, I need some quick input on returning a client's case. He sold 20 acres of desert land, and he gave the guy the deed. He gave the buyer the deed, but never recorded. And we need to now my guy's getting hit with a collection law firm for back taxes. Let's start with this. He's still the owner of record. Should he just pay the money and say that the property was never transferred and say he's the owner? What do you think?
I wouldn't do that. I'd contact the new owner and I would say, hey, look, I've got a bit of a problem here. You need to pay your taxes.
Yeah.
Because I was surprised to learn, using the legal terms, we talk about in personam and in rem liability. I just kind of always figured that tax liability was against the property, but you are actually personally liable for your property taxes. They can sue you personally. You are personally liable. So if you don't transfer that property, then yeah, you can still be personally liable. And then, like you said, on the flip side, you have also transferred the property though, so that person does own it. So if you were to try to make a claim that you own it, they're likely going to defeat that claim. But so it gets into recording. It gets into notice. The taxing authority doesn't have notice. Your creditors don't have notice. So it does create some issues. But I wouldn't try to make the case that you still own the property. I'd try to get it resolved with buyer. I guess worst case scenario, you've got to pay the taxes and then sue the buyer because you don't want to be going against the county. It's not going to end well for you. So I would guess you've got to work something out and say, well, got to sue the buyer now and try to get my money back.
Yeah. Well, and again, the issue here is just because the document wasn't recorded doesn't mean that the ownership didn't pass according to contract law. And one of the attorneys correctly cited Texas Property Code, section 13.001. An unrecorded conveyance is generally void against a subsequent purchaser for value without notice, but it remains binding between the parties to the instrument. So again, if you're talking about who owns it for tax purposes or title record purposes, the actual ownership is still going to be in the name of the original seller. between those two. So if you just pay it, that buyer could come back and say, "Oh no, I know I didn't record it, but between you and me, I'm still the owner. So, thank you for paying my property tax." So, um, and then of course, just by virtue of paying the taxes, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to be, or we get that a lot. Like, oh, well, if I pay the taxes, then I'll own it. And that's just not the case. So, um, if you're going to acquire the property via adverse possession, you have to meet one of the credentials or the thresholds in Civil Practice and Remedy Code 16.026, which is the adverse possession section. And it's not just paying the taxes. So it's 10 years of a whole kind of list of things that you have to satisfy for adverse possession. So
And people do that all the time. Like, I think it's just, we may advise it too, to be honest, but somebody's either claiming adverse possession, or there's a question about a deed, or a question about something that's happened in the chain of title. When you're that person that's making a claim, what they do is they hurry up and go pay the taxes. It's like, oh, well, I paid the 2026 taxes. And that way, when you're standing in front of the judge, you say, I pay the taxes, even though the other guy's paid it for the last 20 years. But you're up there screaming about, oh, this is my property, I pay the taxes. So I always find that interesting.
yeah, a lot of that, a lot of topics in here. I mean, so what do we tell the guy to do? Call the guy and tell the buyer to record it and pay the taxes, assuming you can't find the buyer anymore. Then what do you do? I mean, I would probably just immediately do a new deed, just granting it to the buyer to at least cut that off, right? So,
Yeah.
and then I would call the company and say, hey, can you get this thing in rem? If the collection company is like, no, we don't, we want the money from the back taxes against you, and we want to go after you personally, over former, and I might just pay them instead of having them ruin your credit. But at the very least, doing an immediate deed to cut off the a future liability of taxes is probably a good idea. So
Yeah, we had that situation too. The deed's not recorded, or even, when someone goes and sells to somebody else, and then the bank comes and forecloses, and it's like, well, the bank didn't know that you sold the property, but then they come back in and try to defeat the foreclosure. So I don't know what issues that would give rise to, because you've got a new owner. And like you said, a lot of times we are able to get the taxing authority not to take a judgment against them personally. So as long as it's not a judgment against you personally, and they say, fine, we're just going to foreclose on the property. We're going to get our property either way. We've got people at the sale anyway. Adding one more to the list isn't too much of a burden on us. So sure, we'll just do the sale, we'll get our money, because I don't think they're planning on getting $20K out of most individuals anyway. Is that new buyer then going to come back and say, no, you missed me. I should have been given notice of this. Record your deeds. How about that? Even though, and I think that you are bringing up a good point, like, because when you started talking, my thought was, well, hey, once you deeded the property to them, it's kind of not your problem anymore. Because I thought you were going to go a different way. I thought you were going to say, well, if my creditor now wants to attack the property, and my buyer says, hey, your creditor's coming after me, and I say, hey, man, I'm real sorry about that. You should have recorded your deed. So in that case, it's kind of, buyer should have recorded the deed. But in this case, you're bringing up the situation where the seller actually suffers for something that you would think the buyer would want to do, because it benefits the buyer to protect himself.
if the buyer still wants the property in this fact pattern, I think the property was not worth very much, which is what it was part of the deal. So yes, but you would normally see, buyers would have the most incentive to record the deed for certain. Well, okay, let's go on to our last legal question, and this is another one from the attorney chat room. Hey guys, is anyone here well versed in handling removing a member from an LLC that does not have an operating agreement? So, that happens all the time. You don't have to have an operating agreement, a written operating agreement in Texas to have a valid LLC. If you don't have an operating agreement, you're just going to default to the Texas Business Organizations Code. And as far as there's no unilateral process for removing a member, you're just in a fight. like, hey, is the member, stealing money, and do you want to sue that member and all of that? So we
Business divorce.
did it.
It's basically nasty division of assets.
Yep. And there's really not really even a mechanism to compel a dissolution. I don't think, but when you have no option,
That's what everybody pleads. You race to the courthouse, you file on your behalf and on behalf of the company, because I represent the company, of course. I'm the good guy. You're the bad. I'm suing you to get you out. I'm just trying to preserve the company and get the bad apple out.
Yeah.
And, surprisingly, the bad apple doesn't think they're the bad apple. They think they're trying to do what's best to save the company against your misdirection or your bad leadership. And so, we've seen it a time or two.
Here's something interesting. And the attorney said, for context, the LLC is my former 3-piece band. So I'll let you guess which attorney was in a 3-piece band. He says the drummer they got to replace me when I went to law school has been acting not good. So they want to kick the drummer out of the band. Yeah, right.
But they have an LLC for their band?
This is clearly like the most formalized band.
These are lawyers. These are a band of lawyers who...
this is why they must not be very good, because if they were any good, they're supposed to be like drunk and high all the time. They're not weird about LLCs. They're just playing,
That's how you know how good of a band you are, is how often you can stay drunk.
Yeah, and you're wrecking the whole hotel rooms. Like this is the most boring band in the world. So.
I won't name any names. I hope it's somebody in Austin, because that's the only place I imagine bands going.
We'll play a game where you guess which lawyer that is. So, all right, and then that's kind of a follow up to this. Someone was trying to dissolve the LLC. Different fact pattern. The opposing party agrees to dissolve it, and I'm trying to figure out if I need to draft a separate settlement agreement to dissolve. That's an easy one. Okay, I mean, if everyone's in agreement to dissolve, you can basically just do one gigantic resolution. Okay. And it can all be one document if you want. Remember, LLCs arise out of contracts, so there's not a lot of formality there. If you want to do some type of settlement agreement, call it whatever you wish, you certainly can, but not necessary. That last one was easy. All right. Well, that brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silverman. Chris Hield has been my very, very wonderful co-host today. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice, and this is all for entertainment purposes only. We apologize for everyone that we've made fun of. And if you have any legal questions, email us at info@silblawfirm.com and tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody have a great rest of your week.